Take a look at what happened.
The shooting of Donald Trump July 13 shocked the nation. But can anyone say they were surprised? I've worried about an assassination attempt for the past 2 presidencies.
He didn't just have a gun, he had zip ties.
Just 2 summers ago, a would-be assassin was arrested outside Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's suburban house in Washington, D.C.
This is exactly the kind of event that many worried the unhinged, reckless, apocalyptic rhetoric from prominent figures toward the court could make more likely.
It's striking how much Justice Kavanaugh's stalker, Nicholas Roski, who has pleaded not guilty, was similar to Saturday shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks. Both were mixed-up young men burdened with some obsessive grudge. The United States is overflowing with these guys.
The biggest question is how does an assailant get on a rooftop that close to the former and future president? That's an easy shot for somebody that can be just really a recreational shooter.
In the shooting's aftermath, members of Congress are pressing the Secret Service for an explanation of how such an obvious security breach could have occurred. Tim McCarthy was shot defending then-President Ronald Reagan in 1981.
The Reagan assassination attempt, that was not a victory, that was a failure, because if a protectee of the Secret Service is injured, it's not a victory, it's a failure. So this is a failure, and now we're going to have to look at what happened and what can be corrected so it doesn't happen again.
Memo to Congress. Move quickly to a full, transparent explanation for that unprotected Butler rooftop, because this country, now capable of imagining anything, does not need to descend into another Oswald conspiracy.
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
From what Americans are saying in interviews the past few days, it appears that while they agree the attempted Trump assassination was awful, for many it was simply the last straw of living in an era of unending anxiety and dread. It would be a fool's game to try to pinpoint when this sense of national discomfort began. Some would say the mass shooting at Columbine High School in Colorado in 1999.
Columbine was kind of the first, really at the time, mass school shooting in the country, and it was such a monumental event at the time. It's unfortunate now that has continued on.
Today, few can forget the names of the ensuing events that reside in memory. Virginia Tech, Newtown, Parkland, Uvalde, and the rest.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes on.
Hold on, your head is bloody.
The Butler shooting itself and the Secret Service's failure to prevent it represent a broader, long-running institutional erosion.
The answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
A turning point event that shone the spotlight on this institutional trend was last December's congressional appearance on campus anti-Semitism of the university presidents from Harvard, Penn, and MIT. Their answers were equivocal. They hid behind academic doublespeak.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context.
It is a context-dependent decision.
Not long afterward, Americans spent weeks watching the spectacle of often violent campus anti-Semitic protests.
Oh, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. I'm looking at people, violence. Look at this. They're throwing things at each other. They're pepper spraying each other. How are they allowed to have weapons on campus?
And that also worsened the national sense that something basic was running off the rails.
We'll be having 750 members of the New York National Guard, as well as another 250 personnel from state and MTA police.
Earlier this year, Kathy Hochul was criticized for sending the National Guard into the New York City subway system because of the public's belief that the police could not protect riders from the violent mentally ill.
Get down! Yes. Get down!
Another clue to the weekly chaos, social media with its defining characteristics of exaggeration and self-promotion.
You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down.
Joe Biden ran in 2020 on restoring normalcy. That turned out to be a campaign strategy, not a serious idea.
This MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
Too many interests are invested in keeping the public on edge.
He's willing to sacrifice our democracy, put himself in power.
Mere hours after the Butler shooting, Mr. Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, posted on X that Mr. Biden's rhetoric, quote, led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. Then this.
Things that you may have said that could incite people who are not balanced.
How do you talk about the threat to democracy, which is real, when a president says things like he says? Do you just not say anything because it may incite somebody?
If Mr. Trump uses his acceptance speech to move to higher political ground and stays there, an if for the ages, he will checkmate Mr. Biden. The only unity that emerged from the attempted Trump assassination is that Americans want deliverance from the high-risk present. And what remains of this presidential election is the only game in town for that.
His defiance against somebody who tried to kill him. You will not take this